Welcome to the Driven Moms Answering Adversity interview series. Stories of success through setbacks from Mom Elevated. Together, we can shine a light on how normal challenges and struggles are, along with how we can overcome and rise above them. And today we have Melissa with us to share her story. I'm so excited to hear a little bit. So, can you start us off by just sharing a little bit about your story to get us started?
Yeah. Hey, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Um, my story is just kind of that of, I feel like the typical American growing up in what we would all consider a middle class household but growing up with a single mom, which I think definitely impacts how I grew up. And got married, grew up in, Catholic school. I always had this vision of myself, like the things that I needed to accomplish were, getting married, being a mom, kind of all of the things that we're told to expect our entire lives and to work towards. Um, and I did those things. And then in 2020, I kind of had this moment where I was working with a coach and she started asking me about my motivation. Why was I doing everything I was doing? And I had had my first child by then. And I think, as moms tend to do when we have children, we fall completely to the wayside.
Yeah.
And I suddenly realized everything that I was doing was for everyone else. And that was around the time the pandemic hit. So, just an incredible time to have that realization. And it fast forward quite a bit in 2021, I left my marriage. Um, it was not a healthy marriage by any means. It was a very toxic situation, but um, I had to get to the place where I realized that my kids seeing me in a toxic marriage was much more detrimental to their growing up. They're both girls than them seeing me as a single mom thriving. So I made that decision, and that's really flourished outside of the marriage. And it's really turned into, now I have a passion for healing and helping other women do the same thing.
That's beautiful. Do you think that having grown up with a single mom, like, let you make that decision and know that you'd be okay? That, I grew up that way, so it would be okay? Or do you think it made it more difficult knowing some of the struggles you yourself maybe went through growing up?
That's a really great question. It's hard to say because I do think that growing up with a single parent, I learned to be hyper independent at a young age, which is definitely a trauma response. There was also an alcoholic living in my home. It was my aunt. It wasn't a father figure of any sort, but I definitely knew um, if she could do it, I could do it. Like, and from the moment I started to have that awakening, from the moment my first daughter was born, and I had this inkling, like, oh, this may not work out so well, I started laying the foundation to the best of my ability so that when I did decide to fly, I was going to succeed, no
Yeah.
doubt.
That's a really great way of thinking about it too, when I was going to fly. That's, like,
Yes,
much more freeing and than thinking
yes.
that you're, like, escaping something. Like, I love that. I love that terminology. That's a really great, like, shift in your mindset to say, "When I was ready to fly." That's beautiful.
And it's
Do you
all mindset. As I'm sure you're aware, everything is mindset to some degree, right?
It really is, and it's really powerful. I've actually my son is a pretty negative Nancy some days. And so a lot of things is just, like, getting him to realize, I was like, "This is your choice, like, you have to shift
Mhm.
that. Nobody else can change that for you. I understand that it's, disappointing or you're going through these emotions, but you also have to choose how you're responding to that." And that is a big that's it's a really big empowering time to really realize that you have that control over how you are reacting to something. S
Absolutely. There are adults who have not had this realization walking around. And so to teach that into your kids and instill that into your kids is amazing. I hope when my kids are still a little young, they're still at the age where some of their meltdowns are completely out of their control.
Yep.
Um, but oh, cat bomb.
I know.
And but I hope when they get to that age to where I can be like, okay, this is a full-on choice now.
Yeah.
That I will have that ability to kind of pause and then reflect and just mirror back to them that same sentiment.
I love that. I think that's great. And that is an important distinction too of when they're too young. I mean, obviously you can give them the tools and the things when they are that little, but there are some things that they just don't know how to express a lot of their emotions yet or
Yes,
explain it. Um
exactly.
so piggybacking off of that, what is maybe the biggest adversity that you think you have answered throughout all of the things you've gone through in the past couple of years? And how did you answer that?
Um, I think the biggest one, so when I left, it was a very punctuated moment, and it was actually I made the decision around Halloween 2 years ago, which is crazy to think about. Um, but I had a 4 month old and a 2.5 year old. And at the time, everything, a lot of women who are in toxic relationships, and not just women, of course, this can happen to anyone of any kind of relationship. Um, but I feel like the hardest part of deciding to leave is the decision. It's the going back and forth. Do I stay? Do I go? And that was agonizing for me for some time. So when I finally had that moment that this is not, I can't, this is no longer safe for me to stay, it was like that. And I went into like, okay, we're doing this. I need to set this up, this up, this up. It was actually really freeing for me to have that realization and to finally take action towards those steps. Um, Looking back, I have no idea how I survived that. I was, still working. The baby wasn't sleeping, but I secured an apartment. I didn't even stay in the house. I made it so that when I was leaving the house, he would be out of town because I knew that there was certain furniture I was allowed to take and certain furniture I was not allowed to take. Um, but I feel like that was probably the biggest adversity, just getting out and making that decision, knowing that when I left, it was going to be a bomb that went off.
Yeah.
Um, But what got me through it was my kids. There was no other option. Like I was going to get out. We were going to get out, and I was finally going to be the mom that I could not be in the marriage. I was going to be the silly, playful mom who was no longer walking on eggshells. We could be in our pajamas all day. It's not a big deal. So that was really the light at the end of the tunnel.
Oh, well, kudos to you. I know how big of a deal that is coming from someone who had left in a abusive situation. And I had no idea growing up. I mean, we don't know. We were
Sure,
little. I'm sure I have no
sure.
memories of it because I was so little. And my mom actually didn't even tell me anything until I was like 13. And by
Yeah.
that time, I had already seen things myself because I still
Mm,
had a relationship. And so like putting two and two together, you're like, wow, I can't believe that you. I mean, I was 4, so obviously she dealt with that for 4 years
sure.
before making that decision. And like the strength that it takes to finally make that decision and to be like, yep, I'm gonna be fine. I'm gonna be okay. We're gonna be okay.
Hmm.
It's really huge. And still for her, still having that relationship so that I could still see him and do all of those things was really like, again, looking back on it, you're like, the strength that must have taken to even be in the presence and remember those things that nobody else even probably even knew about.
Right.
Crazy to me. Like, yes, I'm
It
proud of
still is.
you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's
Thank you.
wild. So in that kind of sense, You said you're a nurse practitioner, correct? Are
That's
you,
right.
and now you're also in coaching and helping
Yeah.
with this kind of like empowering.
Yeah. So what happened after I left, I kind of delved into healing. I knew that in order to break the cycle, I had to do whatever I could afford, whatever I could do to heal my own stuff because people don't just accidentally fall into relationships like this. It's typically, you know, childhood stuff, life stuff, things I willingly ignored.
Yes.
Um, and so I had to become aware of those things. And I got into brain spotting and internal family systems.
Okay.
Um, and it was purely selfish for myself and my kids at that time. And then I started with realizing like, oh, I'm seeing a lot of patients and we're not really able to come to a diagnosis, but I'm wondering if they have some childhood stuff that hasn't been resolved or some trauma. Um, I specifically work in gastroenterology, and so I would get, women with pelvic pain or constipation, and they had had, sexual trauma as a child, and it not all patients necessarily need to have that level of trauma, but there was just a plethora of patients that I was like, if we could integrate this to where we could do some parts work, some brain spotting, this could really be, you know, game changing for them. Fewer medications, more like holistic wellness.
Yeah.
And so from there, I was like, I need to be doing this. And I think through all of this, and partially because I have young girls, helping women is just really where my heart is. Um, and so I'm doing coaching in addition to what I'm working on now as a nurse practitioner. And my ultimate goal is, to be so wildly successful that I can work with survivors of human trafficking and just help unburden people of, everything that holds them hostage from
Yeah.
those memories and that trauma.
That's incredible. I love that
Thank
goal.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's
It
fantastic.
just, it excites me as well.
Absolutely. One, it's so fulfilling, right? It's the stuff that you
Yes.
be successful enough that you can do the things that are very fulfilling for you. Yeah,
Yes.
that's amazing. I love that. So I'm slightly familiar with brain spotting just because of some of the people I'm associated with, and some of my friends actually have told me a little bit about that. But I find it fascinating, and I'm sure that a lot of our listeners probably have no idea what that is. Can you give us just
Yeah.
a little idea of what brain spotting actually?
Yeah. So a lot of us spend most of our time up in the cortical region of our brain, and that's like the thinking part. So that's going to be, who you show up at as work and when you're dealing with your kids. But a lot of our memories, especially our traumas, whether we remember them or not, that's a really key part. Um, we store those in our bodies and deep down in our like mammalian part of our brain. So that's the part of our brain that is the first to develop when we're in utero. And then the cortical portion is the last to develop. So that's where everything is stored. So all of the reactions that people have, like if someone cuts you off in traffic, that's my favorite analogy. It's not about someone cutting you off in traffic. It's not about the dishes that your spouse left in the sink for 3 days. It's because it's really triggering something much deeper inside of you that is saying like, I'm not good enough. I'm not seen. Um, and so what we do in brain spotting is we try to access those traumas using an eye position. So you find the sensation in your body. We decide on a topic. The person decides on a topic. We find that sensation in the body, and then we locate an eye position that we work to really exacerbate that feeling. So once we find the eye position, then my job is to somewhat torture a person to get them really activated because we want that out.
Yeah.
And so then the person looks at the brain spot, they continue to process for however long they need to. I'm there supporting them through all of this. And then we come together, we can find a resource spot, which is another spot that is maybe like a really healing, safe spot for the person. And we can close the session with that to allow them to kind of just go into the cocoon afterwards and allow their body and their brain to continue to process what it needs to process.
That's amazing, especially in a safe space where they know that they can go through that process and be
It's
okay.
yes, yes, because that how trauma is formed. It's a, it's when the nervous system is bombarded with stuff that it can't handle in an unsafe environment. And usually people are going through the experience alone. So that's an amazing definition of trauma. So the ability to heal that trauma in a safe space with a safe person is just life changing.
Yeah. Oh, I got goosebumps. That's crazy.
Yay, me too. I love it. I love talking about this stuff.
It is, it's so interesting to me. So, now that you're kind of on the entrepreneur side of things, what do you think it is about entrepreneurs that makes us continue through challenges like that without giving up when times are tough, without letting those triggers win us over, or take
Yes.
control and just say, you know what, I'm just going to go back to the 9 to 5. It's fine. This is
Yes.
complacent.
Oh gosh.
I'm content. Yeah. What do you think that is?
Yeah. I think that, oh, that's such a great point, and I think that's such a great question. I think it's the hope, right? It's the hope that things can be different. It's the hope that, I can make a difference and I'm doing it. And we're not going back. There is no, there's no, as you know, there's no guidebook for any of this. You're just kind of winging it and trying to figure it all out.
Yes.
Um, Trying to figure out a business is not something I was ever taught in school or as a nurse practitioner. But it's the hope that, by me investing my life into this, that my children will be different. And by touching each individual person I touch with this information and these techniques and this strategy, that their lives will be different. And then that just kind of, you know, runs off from there.
Yeah. The ripple effect, right? So
Exactly. Exactly. Or I had this vision in my head of like that star. Did you ever hear about that as a kid? Like the star story?
maybe. I don't know.
It's like I just remember maybe it was a poem about a child and an adult walking on a beach. And, the thought was, if you throw a starfish in the ocean, it doesn't matter. Like, what does it matter? And then I can't remember who it was. I'm really bad at recalling actually like details. But it matters to that one, and it matters to that one, and it
Mhm.
matters to that one. And so if you do that enough times, then you have the ripple effect.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I do recall that now that you now that you explained. I
Something
love
like
that.
that.
It's a great way of like the imagery behind it is really beautiful.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's great. So, okay. So on that note, what overall takeaway or lesson do you think that other mompreneurs would be able to take away from your experience specifically?
Oh gosh. I would just love to instill in every momtrepreneur, expand. Like you're so much more powerful than you even believe you are. Expand beyond your state, expand beyond your country. I mean, there is just such a massive world, and we all get stuck in our little bubbles where we think, oh, I can only do things locally. I can only, matter at my child's school. And we put ourselves in these little boxes, and that's just not the reality. All of us are so powerful. You have the power to change legislation.
Yeah.
Like it only takes one person to start writing to senators for change to start to happen. And it's that same thing. It only takes one person to feel passionate about something on social media before enough people catch on, and then people are like, oh, I care about this, this is really important. So a lot of us women and moms especially tend to think, well, my voice doesn't matter. What I feel, what I say, I'm probably the only one. It doesn't matter. I'm fine. But
Yeah.
everything in you as an authentic human matters and can make such a huge impact once you realize it and just fly.
Ah, that's a really beautiful sentiment. Out of all I think this is the greatest part about these interviews is, like, every single one, I get something out of it. So the minute you said
Yeah,
that, and I was like, "Oh, not at all what I had expected to hear," or so it was just, like, light bulb moment, where you're like, "Okay, I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna go with it, I am gonna write this down," and, that was beautiful, I love that. Expand, and it's so simple, easy to
yeah,
remember, and a
right.
powerful, powerful statement. Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And I
Thank you.
think that's what's so powerful about women connecting and talking about this stuff is like there's so much that even little tidbits that we can learn from each other. Someone has done something that we want to do and they've done it effortlessly. And so you can always borrow from others' ideas and learn from other people. So I think, doing this work and connecting with people is amazing. So I really applaud you for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And I think it's huge to hear other people say that too, without it being discouraging. It should be uplifting. It should be a point of motivation. Reach out to any of us. That's the whole point. Like we are here to
Absolutely.
help all of like each other do
Absolutely.
better, be better. And so I think that's a really powerful message that I'm hoping that I get across through all of these is by saying
Yeah,
we're here together and we do better when we band together. So, yeah, I love that.
absolutely.
So, what is the best way for others to find you if they would like to work with you, learn more about you, just get to know you a little better?
Yeah. So I'm actually going to be doing a master class this month on the
Ooh,
21st of November, right around Thanksgiving. It's a free master class. So follow me on social media. On Instagram, it's at Melissa Rose Coaching. My website is also Melissa Rose Coaching. And then on Facebook, I'm either going to be Melissa Rose is my business page, or you can just add me on Facebook. It's under Melissa Stark.
beautiful. I will have all those links in the description and everything, but just in case they're listening, they can still hear where to follow you at. So, thank
Absolutely.
you. Thank you so much for joining us today. I can't even tell you
Thank
how
you.
enlightening it was for me. I feel like I needed that this morning. Like it was kind of a slower day, slower to get going. So I feel like I needed that to like pick me up and it was very inspirational. I very much
Oh,
appreciate
yay. Oh, good. Thank
it.
you. I'm so glad.
Thank you so much. And as always, your willingness to be open about it is much appreciated and needed in this space. I feel like that is the whole purpose of what we're doing. For those
Yes,
of you out there
absolutely.
facing your own adversity, know that you're not alone. Again, that's why we're here sharing stories and experiences and advice, really,
Yep.
with your own journey. When you need an extra hand or mind for brainstorming during your mompreneur journey, we would love to work with you through the Mom Elevated Society. You will find monthly check ins for goal setting and assessing, and so much more for both your business and your mom life. And until next time, keep shooting for the stars. Bye.